First things first, this game is a gem. I feel it's important to get that out of the way as quickly as possible, as I'm going to spend most of this review talking about things I like in this game, and the fact is that there are many more things here I like than things that I dislike. So if you come here expecting me to completely shit on this game for whatever reason, like maybe you hate it, or you're the kind of gamer who decides they abhor a game simply because they couldn't immediately find success playing it, and so the game must be bad, well, this isn't the video for you. Move along, nothing to see here. I don't think I could change your mind about the game anyway, to be honest. First, I've got to glaze this game up, so get comfy, stick around. If you'll permit me but a few moments of your time, then we can talk about a game that I feel is absolutely worth buying. A game that isn't expensive, offers incredible value for your money, and is inspired by legends from the days of yore. A game called House of Necrosis. House of Necrosis, a game by a sole developer going by the name of Warcus, is at its core a mystery dungeon game. If you don't know what that means, then allow me to explain. Mystery dungeon is a genre in which you take control of a single hero, usually, and you spend the majority of your time exploring a dungeon, obviously, usually moving along a tile-based grid in a turn-based manner. What this means is that for every move you take, the monsters in the dungeon also get to take one. Oh, did I forget to mention there were monsters? There are monsters. There, I mentioned it. These monsters, like any good monster in an RPG, have but one goal: to murder you. And in this case, leave you lying in a pool of your own items. They will be ruthless in their attempts at this, especially later on in the game, and so you must do everything in your power to avoid this fatal outcome. This usually amounts to murdering them before they can do the same to you. There are other strategies involved, of course, and we'll come to those in due time, but the majority of situations are either going to end in your own death, or the death of your assailant. Death for you means that you drop everything you were carrying, and everything you were equipped with, and you're kicked out of the dungeon and sent back to the base camp. Usually a town in a lot of mystery dungeons, but it's a simple room in House of Necrosis. Death for the monster means experience points, and sometimes extra loot, for you. You get to continue living, and move on to kill more monsters. This is where one of the things that makes House of Necrosis special comes in. You get guns. In addition to a variety of melee weapons, you also get guns. Ammo can of course be fairly scarce, but when you have a good supply, your ranged weapon will be a tool of absolute devastation, as it should be. Slash, smash, or blast everything that stands in your way, and you will quickly find yourself at the door which leads to the next floor of the dungeon. Ascending, or descending in some cases, the dungeon will inevitably put you at higher risk, as the monsters get stronger and more complicated as you go deeper into enemy territory. But this increasing difficulty comes with increasingly powerful loot. This genre is essentially defined by risk versus reward, and House of Necrosis is no different in that regard. Alrighty, basic things are out of the way now. Let's move on. Now, you've been looking at the gameplay footage this entire time, and I know what you're thinking. Well, this game looks familiar. That's right, I'm in your head. I'm up here being all spooky and reading your thoughts. Now you're thinking that I'm a weirdo. See? I know. And you're right, I totally am. Whatever, normal doesn't exist anyway. Sorry, where was I? Oh, right. This looks familiar. Well, that's because this game is highly inspired by Resident Evil. If you're gonna borrow things, you might as well borrow from the greats, right? In fact, House of Necrosis is stuffed full of references to gaming legends of yore. Back when my ancient form was still youthful, I was playing and loving a bunch of the games that this one gives the rub to. Games like the aforementioned Resident Evil, Parasite Eve with how the weapon stats are displayed, Final Fantasy in that the effect which is shown when you cast a spell is clearly inspired by FF7, the entire mystery dungeon genre, of course, and hell, even Castlevania. I'll get back to that last one in a later section because it involves some spoilers, and I'd rather give things like that their own section so people can skip past it if they want. The game also at one point referenced Pokemon because it featured an item called Rare Candy, which leveled your character up by one when used. That name has been changed to Special Candy, so I guess the reference is lost now, but, you know, whatever. It used to be that way. Anyway, I think it's high time we talked about how the equipment works in this game. Equipment items are ones which you equip to your character in order to boost your stats and provide an array of abilities to make it easier to slay your foes. I know that's obvious to most of you, but for those of you who don't know, well, now you know. The equipment system in House of Necrosis is another aspect of the game that makes it stand out to me. You see, when you exit the dungeon, either by using this item, the rescue crystal, or by your untimely demise, your character's experience level is reset to 1. Pretty standard for a mystery dungeon game. Now I know what you're asking. Well, how the hell am I supposed to make any real progress when everything I do gets reset whenever I leave? Well, worry not, chum, because that's where the equipment comes in. You see, I said that character levels are reset. Equipment is a different story entirely. Each piece of equipment that you can put on, which come in the form of melee weapons, ranged weapons, and armor, gain experience on their own, independent of your character's level. Melee weapons are leveled by attacking foes with said melee weapon, ranged weapons are leveled by shooting foes, and armor is leveled by being struck. That last one is risky, I know, but finding good ways to do this will pay dividends for you in the long run. These equipment levels are not lost when you leave the dungeon via rescue crystal, and you also take every item you're carrying with you when you leave this way as well. When you die, however, you permanently lose everything you were carrying, as I stated before, so of course the levels are lost when that happens. So again, you need to do your best to prevent that. Next up is the structure of the dungeon you'll be exploring. The dungeon is split into different sections, each with a couple of unique looks for the tiles and walls, and of course, containing unique enemies. Each of these sections as well, with some exceptions, consists of 4 floors, with a powerful boss monster being contained on the 4th of each of these, again, with some exceptions. Between each of these sections after the boss fight is a safe area where you can rest, usually meeting an NPC there who most of the time will provide you with a key to take a shortcut back to said safe area where you met them in the first place. You take these shortcuts via a central hub section of the mansion, containing doors which usually lead back to the various safe areas, as well as to a library which I'll come back to in a minute. Now, when I say the bosses are powerful, I mean that they are either capable of killing you in a single hit if you aren't careful, or their mechanics are complex and require strategic movement and reactions in order to come out on top. Take the first boss, Carnifex, for instance. And no, this isn't a spoiler, the intro tutorial introduces you to this guy fairly quickly. This creature has a variety of attacks it can unleash upon you to inflict grievous damage. These attacks will also hit other monsters who are caught up in the area of effect, with the damage being dealt to those enemies healing Carnifex. The weakness of this monster's attacks is in the charge time. It takes Carnifex a couple of turns to charge up before unleashing these moves, giving you ample opportunity to escape the AoE. Just be careful not to get yourself into a position that makes it impossible to get away in time, or else you may end up looking at this screen. Oh, also, you don't want to meet this Titan in a hallway. Trust me on this. Taking a step back to the aforementioned strategies here, and going a bit more deeply into something I only sort of glossed over earlier, is magic. You can learn to cast magical spells in House of Necrosis. Not an unusual thing in an RPG, of course, but surprisingly less common in horror games. Imagine if a character in Resident Evil could conjure magical fire, that'd be fucking ridiculous. Anyway, these spells are gained via magical grimoires, which are dropped randomly by the enemies in the dungeon. Each enemy has a unique grimoire they can drop when slain, and these spells are themed around that monster's own abilities. Magic spells are game changers, providing some incredibly powerful effects to you. The downside here is that a spell can only be cast once per dungeon run, and so you definitely will want to save them for the right moments or risk screwing yourself over later. This leads me to the library. Remember? Said we were coming back here. You didn't forget about that already, right? I know I didn't. There's no damn way I almost forgot to include it in the script. Nope, not me. What do you take me for, some kind of idiot? Okay, so I almost forgot it. There, you happy? I know I am. So, the library. This room contains a note with a little tidbit of lore, which I won't spoil here, and 2 bookshelves. The right shelf isn't useful right now, But the one on the left contains a list of enemies you have encountered so far, with each listing showing whether or not you have obtained the spell that enemy drops. Very useful if you intend to fully complete the game, as these spells are very much tied to getting 100%. Make use of this place, and keep track of which spells you need. Don't expect getting them to be a walk in the park, however. The drop rates are fairly low, pretty much guaranteeing that you'll need to grind to get them. The bosses have spells too. I know that should be implied when I say that all the enemies can drop a grimoire, but I just wanted to make that clear, just in case. You know what? I'm going to be nice and do you all a solid. I'm going to provide some useful tips to keep you alive during your explorations, at least for a little while. Make no mistake, you are going to die in House of Necrosis. You're going to die, and you're going to lose everything you've been building up. This is going to piss you off. It's probably going to make a good chunk of you crash out and give up on the game entirely. But this game is worth sticking to. Shake off the anger, pick yourself up, and try again. You can do it. I believe in you. Anyway, the tips. I feel it's absolutely necessary to take your time. Move one space at a time if you need to. Don't be afraid to take advantage of hallways either, as they provide an inherent choke point, allowing you to control the flow of aggression toward you. Never fight more than one enemy at a time if you can avoid it, at least until you're ready for it. There are also a couple types of item which both come with a large variety of effects. These items are hexes, and the less useful but still awesome, serums. Both of these items can be thrown at enemies to inflict various ailments upon them or to cause other effects to occur. Hexes are identified right away, but with serums you will need to use or throw them to reveal what they do. Or you can use an encyclopedia item from your inventory to identify all items you are carrying. Needless to say, hexes and serums are your friends. Always keep a couple encyclopedias around to identify things as well. You'll thank yourself for that later on, I promise you. Also, always, and I do mean always, purchase a rescue crystal from the merchant to bring with you into the dungeon before you head out. Shit, I still haven't mentioned the merchant yet, have I? Man, maybe I really am stupid. Okay, then let's get to the base camp room. When you leave the dungeon, again, either by rescue crystal or in a body bag, you will return to this room. Get used to seeing it. Within this room, there will always be a man who is ever so eager to do business with you. You can talk to him to gain useful information for free as well, once per base camp visit, in fact. You can also buy and sell items here. The merchant's equipment items are never all that good, but he does sell a rescue crystal whenever you come here. He also sometimes sells hexes and other sundry items, which are, honestly, much more useful than his equipment. The actually important function here, to me anyway, is the ability to sell your items for gold, which will be useful later on. Speaking of things for later on, it's time for some spoilers. This is your spoiler warning. Skip to the timestamp shown on screen if you don't want to see this stuff. Again, this is your spoiler warning. Here there be spoilers. And I don't mean the shit they stick on the back of race cars. Still here? Okay, cool. Here we go. Speaking about the shop, after the second section of the dungeon, you will have the opportunity to give the NPC you meet in the safe area a rescue crystal. Make sure you have an extra one. You can buy one, then save and exit, then reload your game to re-roll the shop and get another one to do this. Once you give this crystal to him, the next time you return to camp, you will see that he has moved in. This new NPC will allow you to spend your hard-earned gold to re-roll the traits on equipment you have, thereby granting you the ability to create fun builds and look for synergies between your equipment. Experiment with him and see what kind of fun things you can do. Be warned though, this can become very addictive, and may lead to power gaming only to lose your amazing items to a silly death later. That can and will happen. Another thing you'll end up saving money for is this, the Cursed Ashes. This item is unlocked after completing the game with the true ending. It allows you to gain an increased drop rate on grimoires at the cost of powering up the enemies in the dungeon, causing you to encounter far higher numbers of foul and necrotic enemy variants. Make sure you have a decent build before attempting runs using the Cursed Ashes to farm up spells, as this curse puts you in a lot more danger. Also, notice the price, 300,000 gold. This is the Castlevania reference I mentioned earlier, as there is an item in the Sorrow games that gains you a greater drop rate on enemy souls. This item costs 300,000 gold. It's the little details that matter, really. I love this kind of stuff. I mentioned exceptions to the 4 floors before a boss thing, one of which is the section leading to the final boss. This section has more floors than normal. There also exists a selection of post-game dungeons that you can explore, which all feature varying numbers of floors but do not have sections leading to bosses for the most part. I won't be spoiling the contents of these, with the exception of one, the Ancient Depths. You gain access to this dungeon after you kill the final boss and see the credits for the first time. At the bottom of this dungeon, which is extremely challenging in comparison to the main dungeon, some reasons for this extra challenge are detrimental to the game itself in my opinion, but we'll get to that soon. You got your cup ready for that bitter nectar of negativity I mentioned? I just tapped the keg. We'll be drinking soon. Anyway, at the bottom of this dungeon you'll find a sword called the God Slayer. This weapon is required to kill the final boss for good and gain the true ending. It's just another credits roll, but you get access to the Cursed Ashes in the shop after this. Good luck though, the Ancient Depths can be brutal. One more thing, and this one is very important. I would never have guessed that this was possible on my own. I was told how to do this by Warkus, actually. You can throw an item called a Clone Hex at the Glutton enemy, followed by any item you wish from your inventory. The Glutton will consume both items and then immediately die, dropping 2 of the non-Hex item you threw at it. These copies will contain all the stats, levels, and abilities of the original copy. This is an intended mechanic, but it is so needlessly obscure that I'm not sure I agree with its implementation. It is fun, however, so, you know, there's that. Alrighty. I could spoil more stuff, but I'm gonna leave some things for you to figure out on your own. It's time for some negativity! Get that cup ready, because I'm about to fill it. I'm gonna talk about the negatives in ascending order, starting from slightly annoying and ending with the issue I said I despised. Okay? Whenever you use a rescue crystal while on one of the dungeon floors, not the safe areas, but the floors themselves, you're subjected to this animation. It's not super long, but it is unskippable. It's not a massive problem, but I really do wish I could skip it. This animation doesn't play when you use a crystal in a safe area either, so most of the time I find myself waiting to use the crystal in those areas, even if the wait costs more time than the animation would take up. Now, I'm a patient person, and I'm okay with waiting for things, but I hate having my time wasted. This rescue crystal thing feels like it's wasting my time for no real reason. Second up is the obscure nature of a lot of the post-game content. I realize that it's fun to put things in the game that players need to solve and such. It's like a puzzle, and puzzles are fun a lot of the time. My issue is how needlessly obscure some of the solutions are. Like the glutton thing from earlier, some of this stuff is the kind of shit no one would ever guess to do. 180 IQ moves that my measly 115 IQ could never hope to fathom. I realize this one is rather petty though, and so I'm not gonna rag on about it too much. This game's Discord is very helpful, with Warkus providing a lot of information to those who seek it, so that's cool at least. And now for the thing I despise. This thing caused the majority of my deaths and left me seething, wondering why it was ever included in the first place. And I know I'm gonna have people in the comments talking about how it's good and they enjoyed it and that I need to get good and whatnot, but no, I refuse these implications. There are floors in a certain section of dungeon that lock your HP, and the HP of the enemies admittedly, to 1 until you leave the floor. Meaning that you will be randomly dropped into a section where you lose everything if you make a single mistake. Coming from a game wherein the difficulty was quite fair leading into this kind of thing feels incredibly jarring and frankly mean-spirited on the part of the developer. The deaths brought about by this addition, and I use that with quotations because it only subtracts from the goodness of the game as a whole in my opinion, feel absolutely unfair. To be honest, I feel like they were added because the game testers, who probably had hundreds of hours of experience at that point, may have said to Warkus that the game was too easy. One should never take difficulty balancing advice from players with hundreds of hours of experience, folks. It alienates everybody else. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened, of course. I'm just saying that something feels off about this whole thing. Again, I know there are people who are going to be calling me dumb for calling this out. And to those people, I can only say this. I'm not a fan of being fed bullshit with the expectation that I act as though it was cake that was being shoved into my mouth. You can put all the candles and icing you want on a cow patty, but that motherfucker will never be cake. It can only be shit. This issue doesn't make me not love the game, of course. It's like a petting zoo. I love being around all the cute animals, and so I'll deal with the scent of scat in the air to be able to pet them. But at the end of the day, shit can only do what it does best. Stink. And this choice stinks big time. Now there are ways around it, of course. You can circumvent the issue by using certain items that I won't spoil here, but keep that in mind as you move forward and you may be able to save yourself some sanity. And there you have it. I hope you had a nice drink of that bitter draft. Admittedly, it was small, but that's because this game does so many things right. The vast majority of House of Necrosis is amazing, so I can deal with some nonsense if it means I get to continue playing it. House of Necrosis is exactly what it needs to be. It doesn't rely on dumb gimmicks to set itself apart from the crowd. Instead, Warkus chose to allow this game to do what it does do incredibly well, thereby making a mystery dungeon game which has set itself at the top of the ladder in my opinion. Again, there are some design choices that I vehemently disagree with, but the game itself is still amazing in spite of those choices. House of Necrosis is affordable, offers incredible value for the price, and is an amazing throwback to the most legendary and iconic era of video game history ever. Long live the PS1, and long live House of Necrosis. You fucking crushed it, Warkus. Thanks for watching.